Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. We got a great follow-up show today, and we're talking again about the issue of money, except in relationship to relationships. And one of the biggest issues in all relationships is dealing with the notion of finances. And how do we balance what we perceive as value, somebody else perceives as value, and then what do we think of it together? Because in every relationship, like with me and my wife, there's what's going on in my head, what's going on in her head, and who we are together. And what's the best process or methodology to work together to create this team. So, and as we talk about relationships, there's always 2 points, connection and coordination. Connection is that passion we all feel, but just having passion doesn't mean a whole hill of beans. As Tina Turner said, what's love got to do with it? And connection and coordination is how we're living our lives together, which is essential. Like we get up at the same time, we go to sleep at the same time, we have a similar vision of the world, and we have a similar way of how we're valuing money and what we're doing with our resources. You know, money, time, whatever our resources are. So that's our show today. You are listening to Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry. I happen to be Dr. Scott Terry for some reason. And with us again on KRUU 100.1 on your FM dial, where, by the way, you can go to the Arden Center's website and pick up shows there, podcast and YouTube shows. And you could also go to our YouTube channel. What's our YouTube channel?
Arden Counseling Center.
Can you spell Arden for everyone?
A-R-E-N-T. A-R-D-E-N-T. Counseling. C-O-U-N-C-I-L-I-N-G. And then Center, C-E-N-T-E-R.
Okay. Yeah. So, excellent. Thank you, Bella. And say hi, this is Bella.
Hi, I'm Bella.
All right. And Kyle and Elizabeth, other interns on the line. So, say hi.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kyle. I'm an intern of Dr. Scott Terry's, and I'm going to be going to graduate school for mental health counseling.
And I'm Elizabeth. I am in school right now for music teaching.
And you've also been doing some intern with us way in the past in another life of stuff, of doing things. And so, Kyle, where should we take this show today? How do we talk about, how else do we really think about this notion of finances, this resource? And again, we talked before in a previous show, or depending on how the order of these shows go, maybe in the future show, about money and what does really money mean to us? What do we do with that resource? And in this society, in the U.S., one thing I was thinking about is this notion of we get stuck in this notion of more. And if I only have more stuff, more money, more things, then I'll be happy. If I get a good deal, oh my God, if I get a good deal, I am so happy for 5 minutes. Well, maybe 2 minutes. Okay, maybe a minute. All right, but at least I'm happy for a moment, right? Except then I have more things. And what am I doing with my things? My things aren't bringing me happiness. My things often are more of a burden to me. So on Netflix, one movies I recommend to people is this one called Minimalism. And it's not a brilliant documentary, but it's a useful concept for people to get this notion of things aren't bringing us more happiness. They're becoming a burden to us. And it's not that you should go without things, right? Not have pictures on the wall if you like pictures on the wall. But having the bigger house and the more stuff, and now I need a storage locker, and now I'm hoarding more and more things, you know, it's not bringing me more happiness. And what's really fascinating about this notion is we all have different ideas of what we're hoarding or what we're attached to. So, for example, for me, I happen to be a geek, a proud geek, so to speak, and my hoarding was paper and books. And for me to get rid of literally about 1,000 books and to get rid of 18 milk crates just for my dissertations, as well as 6 filing cabinets so far. You know, I got the best scanner in the world, and what I want, I scan in, and what I don't, I get rid of. because I now have better access through that. The paper, the books, the stuff wasn't bringing me happiness. It was a burden. And I kept moving. I've moved 4 times in the last, 5 years. It's, and in terms of a relationship, getting back to this notion of relationship, it wasn't bringing me more happiness. It was bringing me more backache as well as clutter. And so what is important, I keep, I value, I have it mean something even greater to me. But what I don't need anymore, what I've let go of, what's not bringing me joy, meaning, purpose, something useful in my life, I can let go of. I don't have to be lost in stuff anymore. So how do you guys view this notion of relationship and finances and stuff? What do you think? What do you think, Kyle? Where would you go with this?
So there was a study done at Utah State University, and what they found was that the couples that argued over finances were more likely to get divorced, especially if they argued several times a week or almost every day. And so it's so the solution is we don't want to. So we're talking about couples. So in our last show, we talked about does money increase life satisfaction? So right now we're actually talking about couples and money. And so couples that fight a lot about money have increased likelihood. It's a correlation, so it's not a proven. It's not proven that this is the cause. There's a difference between correlation and cause, but there's a higher correlation of divorce rate, like a much higher cause. So the solution is to talk about money compassionately with the other person. Money can actually bring up a lot of pride. It can bring up a lot of ego, and so we need to be compassionate towards the other person if we're having difficulty with finances, or if we're really rich and we're trying to decide, which vacation spot we want to go to. And so so the best solution is to realize that each person has their own ingrained beliefs and values of money. In fact, they talk about psychology. In psychology, it's talked about 2 different types of people, or you could even say it's a continuum or a spectrum. So you got the spender who doesn't necessarily, I don't want to say not value money, but they're like, let's spend the money. Let's spend our money. Let's go on a nice vacation. Let's exchange goods. And also, let's not think about it all too much. We have the money. Let's be a spender. And then there's the saver, where they're more frugal and they really value money, and they value, okay, we're going to only spend money on really important things, and we need to really be strict and stringent about money. And you have these in low SES families and high SES families and middle SES families. So it's not just low SES families are savers and high SES families are spenders, or vice versa. That's not how it works. And so maybe your partner is a spender, maybe you're a saver, or maybe you're both spenders, or maybe you're both savers, or maybe you're somewhere in between. But the point is, whatever the difficulty with finances in your relationship and talking about money, we have to realize that each person has valuable information to share and has valuable opinions, and we need to listen to the other person and take in with the other person, not just say, oh, well, my way's best,
So we come back to a balanced perspective, and what do we both value and not value? And I think it's interesting, overlap in this other show of does money bring us happiness? And the quick answer is, well, if we really have in poverty, yeah, having a few bucks really does matter. But over a certain amount of money, 50, 70,000 in the U.S., and obviously different rates in different other countries, doesn't bring us any more happiness. And in fact, often in relationships, it's the same burden. If I have too much money and I'm not able to utilize that energy and do something with it, it becomes another burden. Okay, now I've got a bigger house, and now I've got a yacht, and now I've got this, and now I've got that. and it's created more distance instead of I'm buying things, but I don't have a greater purpose to my life. What am I doing that has value and meaning and purpose? And it's just, okay, I could donate some money, but that's different than getting, as we talked about, having skin in the game with like students in college. You've got to have skin in the game. You've got to have real, power and purpose to what you're doing. Otherwise, when you get challenged, you fail. And you don't know how to recover from that failure. Failure, as we've talked about in the past, is a wonderful thing, but if I can't learn how to utilize it, and failure is inevitable with couples where people look at money differently than each other. Each one sees the other one often as, when we're stressed, is inadequate and they're not providing enough, or they should do this and they should do more, they should do less, or the stereotypical roles, the man should be making the money, and then the woman feels a certain way because the man is making the money, and then she's beholden to him, or vice versa, where the woman is making the money and then the man feels inadequate because they're not a provider or doing what. And so we get trapped in these traditional roles that are meaningless. And I want you to hear that, absolutely meaningless in today's day and age. Because there is greater equality and there is greater purpose to what we can all do together. And we have more power as a team, a couple does. And it doesn't matter if we're talking a straight couple, a gay couple, a lesbian couple, whatever couple it is. We have more power as a team, and what are we creating together? Again, being coordinated on that same page. So, Elizabeth, what do you think when you're hearing this?
What do I think? I think that I'm agreeing with everything that's going on. I'm agreeing that respect and compassion for another view is extremely important. I'm also reflecting on my own, because you were talking about money and how it relates to values and deeper things in life. And for me, money is right now associated, very tied up with my idea of myself as an adult, as a functioning adult. And the way that I am handling money reflects upon the extent to which I'm an adult. And so that feeds into my relationship in the sense that thinking about money, talking about money can bring up these really big issues having to do with, am I still a child? Am I an adult? To what extent do I belong to my parents? To what extent am I my own person? And to what extent am I part of a team? Another thing that came up as we were talking about this, I was thinking about what changes for couples when they go from being in a relationship to getting married. What are the different expectations that arise concerning money when people get married? Because I know that a lot of people combine their bank accounts, and there's the issue, children aren't always, it's not that a couple will only have a child if they're married, but often when you get married, you're really starting to think about children. So how, if you have two styles of dealing with money that are very different, but then you're about to have a child, how do you reconcile that in order to save enough money and also what does it mean to have enough money to give a child a good childhood?
And if two people have two different opinions of money, so maybe one's a saver and the other one's a spender, how do the parents have to agree on being one way or the other? Like, do they say, well, we can only teach our child one way, and so how are we going to teach our child if we have different views?
And I think it really lends itself to this notion of values. What is, again, this value of money and what are we doing with it? And again, that is very, very relative to where you're living and how you're living and the world that you grew up with money, without money, and what are you doing with that resource? And again, what are you doing as a team? By the way, you're listening to Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry, and today we're talking about on KRUU 100.1 on your FM dial, which, by the way, broadcast if you're lucky enough to be in Fairfield, a great place to live, and you happen to be at beautiful solar-powered KRUU FM, where you could also find some of the podcast. You could listen in on Tuesday nights at 6:30 and rebroadcast 12:30 in the afternoon on Thursdays. All right. So, Bella, you were going to read some stuff that you found about finances and couples. And I think to get some of this other perspective, some of the clinical perspective, I think is also a good idea. Because I think we come back to this notion, what's the pragmatics of what this means? So, for instance, Elizabeth was talking about, do couples combine their incomes? Do they have separate checking accounts? Do you micromanage the other person? Is the other person spending more money than is acceptable for you as a partner? Again, this whole notion of partnerhood is really important. And if you perceive the person as spending money inappropriately, they decide they want a fancy car when you don't want to spend it on that. You'd rather spend on something that's you find more purposeful and meaningful or practical, then it becomes an issue. Or the other person's too miserly and hoarding money when it's like, sometimes we need to live and go out and have a meal. So this sense of balance is essential. So, Bella, what do you want to say?
The main thing I was finding was that trust and communication were the most important. Online in multiple different websites, it was talking about how you should really sit down and talk with your partner about your financial goals and values, so that if you're a spender or if you're a saver, you can find a balance between the two. Because if you spend too much money, you could get in a lot of trouble. But if you're a saver, then by the time you're old and you have all this money, what are you going to do with it? And your satisfaction in life could decrease because you worried too much about all the money that you were trying to save. It was also talking about how you should, when you talk to your partner about your financial goals, you should remove your emotions, so that if you get jealous of how much money that they get, or you feel less than for the amount of money you have, that it just really won't be in the equation, because you're just talking about how it is as a whole, because you are one unit. As well as, while you sit down and talk with them, you should do it weekly and not just do it once in a while.
I love that idea as well. You're coming up with some great ideas. Thank you so much. I mean, and I think you're absolutely right. I think I often recommend in couples counseling, have a weekly sit down, and spend a half an hour talking about your finances of the week. And you know what? If it only takes 5 minutes, guess what? You got 25 minutes to have a real conversation about something else, about the values and the meaning behind what we're spending, what we're doing with our time. Because it's not just money, it's our time in our life, and what are we doing? If we're just going to work and coming home and watching TV and going to sleep and getting up again, maybe something's missing. So where is that balance for us? But I love the weekly check-in. In fact, for couples that are having difficulty, I say you should have a half an hour every night of a real conversation. But weekly, certainly for finances, and that deeper thing that's a trigger for all of us. If you have money or you don't. So keep going, Bella. What else?
The main thing that everyone was saying, how you should be honest with each other, because if you're spending more money than you say you are, then going back to the study, you could have a lot more fights and then end up getting a divorce. And then where are you then?
Okay. Anything else that you want to say?
No.
No? Okay, great. So, Kyle, what do you think? Kyle? Are you still there? Elizabeth? Kyle?
Really interesting what Bella was saying about having connecting 30 minutes weekly, talking about money, or talking about anything. Maybe talking about spirituality. Maybe talking about each other's interests and going for a walk. It's really surprising how easy it is for couples to maybe they have kids and they have work and they have their own hobbies and they go with their friends, and how easy it is to get lost and to stop connecting with each other, and to and really the answer for relationship issues is connecting. So connecting more. So I like Scott. I like your idea. If you're having issues, talk 30 minutes every night. Turn off the TV. Don't just connect by watching TV. So I mean, how many couples are having problems and they go to work and then they come home and then the way that they connect is watching their favorite show together, or playing some games together. It's like, go for a walk or have a real conversation. Tell each other about your days and celebrating. So talking about psychology and research. I remember reading an article about different ratios. So the important thing isn't being there for your partner when they're in need and they're having a hard time. The most important thing research shows is being there for your partner to celebrate achievements and to celebrate good times, and to celebrating with your partner is really more conducive to establishing and to maintaining a good relationship. Celebrating achievements and ideas and beliefs.
I think that's an interesting point. Almost like what you were saying in the last show, or a previous show, or show to come, depending on how the order of these shows turn out, where you start talking about the experienced self versus the remembered self. And if we're celebrating together and we're really finding points of connection, it nullifies the harshness, right? They say you've got to have 10 positive things for every one thing or something like that. But it's also, if we go to bed angry at each other, we don't sleep as well. We disconnect from each other, and it's hard to create that sense of connection with the coordination of our lives when we're missing one or the other. But on the counterpoint, if we're spending the time to really find connection and coordination on a daily basis, even if it's a ritual, even if it's, a half an hour, so we can look forward to, I know tonight at 8:30 at night, I will have time alone with my partner to really be with my partner and to really go over what happened during my day and to look at it. Or, Sunday night is when we do finances. Okay, I know I can hold off talking about this money issue and how I feel that you're spending something or doing something that I don't want to do. Or I really want to spend money on this particular thing. It becomes kind of difficult. And again, this goes across all types of relationships, LGBTQ, or whatever it is. We still have the same dynamics of how we connecting, how we coordinating, how we using finances as a tool as opposed to a weapon. And again, like we were comparing it to giftedness, having this great finances, right? So let's say we have lots of money, could be this great tool, but it could also be this terrible weapon that we're using against ourselves as a way to run away. So it's always how we use things. I always talk about application. Anything could be good or bad depending on how we use it. So, Elizabeth, what are you thinking?
A lot of wonderful ideas floating around. I guess as, the person who always is trying to find the problem in whatever we're saying, my question is, like, are there views, is it possible for a couple to have views of money that are just not compatible at all? How can, where is the line of, okay, two people can have separate views of money and respect those views versus, it's impossible to create the kind of life that you want if the other person has a different financial view. What do you think about that, Scott?
Yeah, I think it's possible to do that, but I think I think we all have different perspectives, right? We all have different ways. We're all stuck in our own skin, and we all see finances different than one another. So me and my wife, or my wife and I, see finances and the value of money and what we're creating in somewhat different ways. But in the bigger picture, I think it's the same picture. It's the same thing. So I think we can get lost when we're hurt in seeing the differences instead of how to capitalize on those differences. I think it's, again, this notion of, again, I love this thought of application. Exercise could be good or bad depending on what we do with it. Well, trauma could also be good or bad depending on what we create from that terrible experience. Finances could be good or bad. I mean, so depending on what money is there or not there, or how we perceive it, or the differences. The reason you want somebody who's different from yourself is because it helps you grow. The point is, you want difference. You don't want it so different that you're stretched and pulled apart, but you don't want it so similar where you're exactly the same on everything. You want enough of a gap where you can see a point of growth and how you can be growing and the other person can be growing, and how you can grow together. I don't know if that answered your question, Elizabeth.
I think so, Scott. Thank you.
So we only have a couple minutes left. Kyle, how else did you want to finish this up today?
I'd like to end this conversation by talking about a mother and her daughter who are having a hard time, and the mother is the daughter is not her blood daughter. It's her stepdaughter, and the mother said, "Well, I don't really feel like you're my child," and so there's this discourse between them. And the mother wished she hadn't voiced that. And the daughter didn't hear that because the daughter was really upset. And so they were trying to build a connection. And so the mom said, "Oh, well, I'm going to buy you a car, a really expensive car. And that'll solve everything. That'll make you talk to me again, right?" And the daughter said, "Yeah, sure, Mom." Like, that's what she wanted. But really, all the daughter wanted was to spend time with the mother. So if the mother said, "Oh, well, let's go horseback riding together," or "let's go do archery together," the daughter would have really appreciated that. And so sitting down and talking and spending time with each other and really opening up and realizing that we're different people with different needs and finding a common ground, that's connecting.
And so, in a sense, it's the exact same analogy to a couple's relationship, of whatever couple.
Right,
you know?
Yeah.
Excellent. Elizabeth, how would you like to finish out today?
I have nothing more to contribute.
Okay, Bella? Any other thoughts from you?
Just being honest with your partner.
Honest. Why is that important? Be honest with your partner.
Well, if you're lying with each other, then there's going to become a rift between the two of you where you could start to fight or you could just start drifting apart. And being with honest each other allows you to trust each other and just become more connected.
I see. So honesty is essentially a bridge. That doesn't mean you have to disclose everything to your partner, but it does mean that sense of, like, vulnerability. Like, I'm really open to loving you and to really being connected to you. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Mental Health Matters, KRUU 100.1 on your FM dial. Mental Health Matters. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.